or Facebook Live. So you can talk to Facebook Live right now. I would for like a minute.
All right. So thank you everybody for joining us today for Transformation's first Recovery Speaks podcast. And today here we have Mr. Joshua Camacho. He is our co-host, and we have Dr. Cyntrell Crawford. I'm honored to have her presence here with us today. So let me start off by saying good morning to you all tuning in to Transformation's first live podcast. It's definitely a very cold morning out here in Reading, Pennsylvania, but we are here to get you warmed up with great conversation this morning. I want everyone to know, if you are from Berks County, PA, and are looking for a way out of your substance abuse disorder, or know someone who is struggling with their substance use, you can call me, Lee Cruz, and I can refer you to the services you may need. The number to call is 484-772-7079, or email me at transformationslc14@gmail.com. Being this is Thanksgiving week, we are addressing some topics that people will be facing in the coming week. Again, welcome to our Recovery Speaks podcast. My name is Lee Cruz. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I am super blessed to be alive in this beautiful thing we call life. For me, it's been an exciting journey to be where I'm at today, and to know that I have gained an overabundance of friends, colleagues, co-workers, wife, and great relationships along the way. And with me today is my co-host, Joshua Camacho. Before we get started here, today speaking on our topics of the day, I'm asking that Joshua introduces himself and give you all a summarized background on himself. Welcome, Josh.
Like Lee said, my name is Joshua Camacho. I'm 35 years old. I was born and raised in Reading, Pennsylvania. And from the very early parts of my childhood, drug and alcohol was very present in my life. And I was in some sort of full-blown addiction, whether I thought I was able to maneuver as the normal do in society for over 20 years. But now my mission is to do everything in my power to try to help other guys like me understand that there's a way out and that there's a better way to live.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for sharing some of yourself with us all. Now, our guest for this morning, Transformation welcomes Dr. Cyntrell Crawford. Good morning, Dr. Cyntrell. Please give us a little background on yourself and experience in the field.
So, I'm Dr. Cyntrell Crawford. I'm new to Reading. I've been working in Pennsylvania for the last 6 years, but I'm a psychiatrist. I also help people with addiction find a way to recovery and get a new life. I actually got to this area because I actually really love Pennsylvania, but I couldn't really find my grounding, but I found that Reading is really nice. You know, and I actually like the access to different places. You know, I was in New York, I was in Maryland, so that's nice. But my background, you know, I do a lot of things, but my passion is actually psychiatry. All things psychiatry. You know, I love treating children to geriatrics. You know, what is it, womb to the tomb. So, right now I do inpatient, I have outpatient practice. Options PA is in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's a new startup. We're treating people with addiction as well as mental health issues. If you need help, you can contact us. You can go to optionspa.com and just give us a call or give us a direct message. But I've been working with people with addiction and mental health for so long. You know, it's just second nature to me now. I have 10 years of experience. I love the severely mentally ill because I feel like they have so much against them. There's so much stigma and shame, and that actually, you know, translates to people with addiction because they also have so much stigma and shame. You know, there's nothing like, you know, when a person who is trying to recover have to deal with all the things that they've done in their past, you know, like stealing from their mom, prostituting, you know, and just the things that they've done to their bodies, you know, maybe they have to deal with, you know, the abscess, the loss of teeth, you know, the loss of employment, the the records, you know, trying to restart their lives, you know, and then they have people in their lives that sometimes just, you know, beat them over the head. You know, and that comes with, you know, severely mentally ill as well as people with addiction, you know, coming to me trying to deal with all the shame, the trauma, and rebuild their lives one step at a time. You know, and the easiest way to relapse is actually being around family and friends.
Amen.
You know, because sometimes they don't allow you to grow. They don't allow you to expand yourself because they always want to remind you of what you were or who you were, you know, versus keeping you in the present. Because I feel like when you have something as horrible as an addiction, if you try to go back to the past or think too far in the future, you know, that's a good way to just bury yourself right back into your disease. So staying in the present and focusing on yourself in the present moment is the best thing. I always tell my patients, you know, don't worry about tomorrow, don't worry about today. We just gotta get through this minute. You know, this minute is the most important minute of your life. If we can get through this minute, then we can worry about the next 5, we can start planning, etc. I do think you should plan, but don't plan to fail by stressing yourself out by saying, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. No. What do you need to do right now? Breathe.
I love that.
Take a breath, like I'm not doing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cyntrell, for sharing your background with us as well. Now, I'd like to encourage all who are currently following our podcast, please hit that subscribe button at the bottom of the page and continue to follow all of our upcoming segments. What our goal is to address the real struggles people in recovery have and just exploring on who we as people in recovery are. There will be some serious conversations about feelings, emotions, barriers, stigma, and continuous struggles that we all face as people in long-term recovery. As you are all aware of, this is a live podcast, so if anyone has any questions or comments, please type them in and we will answer all the questions and comments accordingly. Or you can call into our podcast live and we will have you address the question on the air. The number to call again is 484-772-7079. So, you know, to piggyback off of what you had said, Dr. Cyntrell, people in recovery, when they come into recovery, the biggest part of them getting established and finding a foundation for their recovery is that stigma and shame. And that biggest stigma and shame comes from being around the family. So the topics that we're going to touch on today relate to that. So Dr. Cyntrell, what are your thoughts on how shame plays a role in our process in early recovery over the holidays?
You know, I was actually thinking about this for my own self, with shame and processing the holidays. And I think what the biggest thing is, you know, there's always this white picket fence versus reality that we all deal with. You know, do I have the perfect family? You know, what is my parents' expectations of me? What are my own expectations of me? And how does that relate to, you know, what we see on TV, like the Brady Bunch and the Cosby Show? You know, for me, you know, I didn't really care about the Brady Bunch. For me, I'm black, so there were a bunch of white people in the house and they had a maid. You know, I was more of a Cosby Show because for me that was a projection of where I wanted my life to be as a black American. You know, and I know everyone's whatever about what he did, but for me, growing up in the projects and dealing with welfare, food stamps, my mom and dad not being high school graduates, but then I have aspirations to be a doctor. So, but they can't understand me. You know, they don't understand me. Like, why are you studying? That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. You know, versus, oh, I get why you're studying because you need a job to, you know, get out of here. Versus everyone around me not really wanting to get out of there. But then I still have to celebrate my family. I still have to be around them, right? So how do they accept me, even as a doctor or whatever? And so I just look for things to motivate me, right? So I started looking outside of my own environment. And so what did that give me? That gave me some shame because then I started being embarrassed. Like, oh, my mom had me at 14 And I remember all of my friends' parents are old, you know, but my mom is 20. You know, my mom's 25 as I kept getting older. You know, so then I was like, oh my God. And I think that's what people do, right? Start comparing themselves to others. Start comparing themselves to the white picket fence, the idea of perfect America, the idea of the perfect family unit. And sometimes that does not add up to what your life is actually. So in early recovery, when you're first getting away from your addiction, and then you're going to your family during the holidays, maybe it's your first holiday, and you know they have a vision of you, they have a picture of you, they remember when you stole the TV, they remember when you overdosed, they remember when you were so drunk you tore up the house and you had to be arrested. You know, they remember that 50 DUI. I don't know if you got the 5. You know that you're not gonna get the 5. you know, they remember those things. Right. You know, and then you're trying to come there and say, you know, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not shooting up anymore. I'm not drinking a fifth of vodka in 5 seconds. You know, that's not me no more. But then you're sitting there at the table and everyone's trying to pass the judgment or pass whatever. Right. And then you're in your head also feel ashamed about that. You feel ashamed that you took all this time to finally wake up from your disease. You know, and then there's the pressure, right? Of, you know, are they gonna judge me? Am I gonna judge myself? You know, and who's gonna say it first?
Yeah, because with my family, when it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't take occurrence much anymore. You know, once the grandma dies, that kind of can lead down where it doesn't happen. But then it always, the holidays are always story times. So then, like, you have to deal with the, oh, do you remember that time Josh was so high he fell off the back porch? And then, you know, just it'll lead into making it a normal occurrence to, you know, berate or, you know, degrade you when that's not who you're sitting there trying to be today, you know, at that current time.
And then it's embarrassing.
Right.
Like who wants to remember when you pissed yourself?
Right.
Because you were so drunk you couldn't get to the bathroom. Who wants to remember when you fell off the balcony and bust your head, and you don't even remember? You probably, and the thing is, you don't even remember it. Right. Like they're remembering it for you. So now you're back in the state of, oh man, what was that like? Oh, and what if it takes you to the state of, I remember what I like. I like getting high.
About that, yeah.
Like, what if it takes you to that place? Now, that's the place that you don't want to be, right? You don't want those stories to trigger.
That's right.
The relapse.
Right. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I want to go back to Josh on his take on how shame plays a role in our process in early recovery over the holidays for yourself, being a person in long-term recovery.
For me, it's a little bit different due to the fact of the family aspect of it. For me, is just not there. So I struggle a lot with that, you know, that vision that you were speaking of the white picket fence, just knowing that even if I wanted it to be white, there is no fence, there is no family, there is no house to go to. You know, for me, it was a huge struggle early on for me to remain sober over the holidays. My wife will attest to the fact that I absolutely hated the holidays for a very long time, because there was no sense of family at all. And I always felt alone. I always felt like the drug and the alcohol was all I had. That was where I went. So for Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, Black Friday, there was no shopping for Black Friday for me. I was going to the bar. I was hoping they had deals on shots. But
they usually did.
Yeah, and then just being able to, you know, transition out of that changed my way of thinking, because me and my wife, we have built a family. And even though me and my wife had kids already, I was still 2-3 years into my relationship, sitting there on holidays like, this ain't it. Not seeing all of the blessings I had around me. And I had to work very hard at that. Like, my wife loves Christmas. She loves being very cheesy. I love you, babe. She loves being very cheesy and doing these things. And I used to realize that I would just completely rain on her parade because of the negative things that I had from my past, my trauma, my inability to see the joy in anything outside of drugs and alcohol. And it was hard work. Now today I'm much more so involved. We take that family picture where we all have the pajamas on in front of the Christmas tree, and I'm actually happy because I realize that I have a family. I built my own, and I'm trying to build one that's based on love and being open-minded. Like I don't hide, my past from my children. I try to educate them with my mistakes so they don't make them. But it was just a little bit different for me. But yes, it stinks, especially if you don't have that house to go to. It could be a little bit harder, because hopefully in a house full of family, you have that cousin or that uncle or that aunt that understands and pulls you to the side and says, hey, forget him. Don't worry about what they're saying. But when you're alone, you're alone. And the worst place for us to be a lot of times is alone.
And thanks, Josh. I could definitely relate to a lot of what you just said. Coming from the background that I came from, I lost my dad 6 months before I was before I was born, and then I lost my mother 6 months after. So I was alone my whole life. There was a family that raised me that they were toxic for me. And I ended up getting kicked out of the state of New York at the age of 14. And somehow throughout that journey, I ended up here in Reading, Pennsylvania. But in that time of my addiction, I was lost in my addiction for 28 years. And I believed I was in this world alone. So to cover the pain, and over the years, it didn't just happen overnight. I didn't just wake up and I'm an alcoholic, coke addict, all that stuff, every substance under the sun I was utilizing. And it didn't just happen, it progressed over time. But that came from the person I became due to my traumatic events as a child, right? Because I learned to be shy, I learned to isolate, I learned to survive due to the physical abuse, sexual abuse, all that stuff. So it kind of getting into my young adolescent years and into my early adulthood, I knew how to survive alone. So when I met somebody, my first lady, I felt like she was my mother. So I just took her on because she told me she loved me, so I felt like, ooh, somebody loves me, right? So right away, I clinged on to her, and I was a clinger. And that's what I did, and she enabled everything I did. So everything I did was good. I had a lot of children, but I still knew how to be alone. So I could ruin holidays in a heartbeat. There's times I urinated on Christmas trees. I didn't care. Wake up in the morning, tree be upside down or out in the front yard. I messed up a lot of holidays for my children, the ladies that were in my life throughout my years. I've been married. This is my third marriage. I was in a 20-year marriage where I don't think I ever gave them one good holiday. We never even went on vacation together because her family didn't want me around. I was a drunk. And it didn't matter to me. I'd play stupid jokes like tell my kids, what do you want for Christmas? Pick it out of this, what do they used to call them, things that they fill the newspaper with. It tells you what's on sale.
Oh,
the inserts.
Yeah, inserts.
So I tell them what to pick, and they pick their Christmas gifts, and then while they're sleeping, I'll clip them out of there and then hang it on the fridge and tell them there it is. I'll get it at a later date. And, today I can say that as a learning thing for me today, right? But back then I thought it was funny, and my kids have been traumatized due to that. So we don't know the effects that we have on our children, and it's sad. But so I could definitely relate to the loneliness and excluding everybody out of your life. And even today, as a person in long-term recovery, it's still hard for me. The holidays are still hard. Not that I want to use, but it's still a sense of there's not a holiday.
Yeah.
It's still tough. So I've never been a holiday person. It's never been something that I really care about. Although I'm married now, I'm happily married, and I want to be able to do that, but there's something inside of me that doesn't allow me to do that. I try to be the best husband that I can be. You know, my wife is very supportive, and she knows the struggles I have, and we just, you know, we continue to work on ourselves on a daily basis to make things better. So, you know, I can definitely relate to what you were just talking about. And then Dr. Cyntrell had mentioned earlier about the triggers over the holidays, and that's actually the next topic that we're going to talk about is how to avoid triggers where you go visit for the holidays. So how do you feel about that?
You know, for me, so my thing was always alcohol, right? You know, you put a bottle in front of me and I'm gonna drink it. It's gonna get drunk. So when I stopped doing that, my family wasn't really. I think they liked that part of me, right? Because everything else seemed a little too cookie cutter, right? I became a doctor, but I still like to pour back, right? So usually I actually don't even like holidays. You know, I actually like to work holidays. I've worked every holiday except the one when my aunt died. And that was 2 years ago. And I actually was scheduled to work, but then I got a call that she was dying. So as far as triggers, when I started the whole not drinking and trying to live sober, I actually connected to that acronym HALT, where I had to make sure if I was hungry, if I was angry, if I was lonely or tired. And I never thought that would be, like, when they told me that crap, I was like, well, obviously you see what I felt about it. I was like, so is that really what's going to stop me from going to the bar?
Right.
Thinking about it, taking a break, taking a breather. That's what you want me to do. Okay, I'm going to take a breather and think to myself, am I hungry? Okay, no, I'm not hungry. Am I angry? I might be. Am I lonely? Always. Am I tired? Always. So I got to fix one of these, right? You know, I learned how to be lonely because I always felt separated from my family, like I wasn't a part of them. You know, so lonely was normal. And actually, the funny thing is I've been getting calls from someone who I was with for 7-10 years. And I was like, man, I was never lonely with you, but I caused so much chaos. And people always say, oh, you're a doctor. You don't have blood problems. Yeah, actually, doctors kill themselves on average more than anybody else.
Wow.
You know, so if you're broke and you're like, oh, you know, that person has a better life than me. Yeah, I got money. Doesn't mean that I have a better life than you. I'm not saying that I have a horrible life. I enjoy my life. But, you know, you really do need to take a time out. And what I actually have learned is you have to really think about people, places, and things, right? That's what you have to think about. So, for the holidays, you shouldn't want to be lonely. And you need to figure out, though, who are your people, what places you're going to go to, and what things are you going to do when you're there, right? So that's a preparation thing. So who will help me stay sober this holiday? Where will I go to feel loved, to feel cherished, and to enjoy my day? What are the things I'm going to do when I'm there? Am I going to eat the turkey? What drinks are what am I going to drink? For me, it's what I'm going to drink.
Right.
You know, I don't know, other people have other things, you know, like, you know, what they're not going to, like, snort or something. But, you know, what am I going to drink? You know, that was the biggest thing for me. So I fell in love with Arnold Palmer. You know, that was my thing. I love the mix of sweet tea plus lemonade. Actually, usually I did unsweetened tea and lemonade that was sweet. Because if it was too sweet, yeah, then it's like sugar rush. You know, so I think those are the important things, you know. And you have to realize, you know, some things you just have to ignore. You know, because people, you know, I told someone this, people love misery for some reason. You know, like think about how our society has. I was thinking about this the other day. How our society has gone. Even what we watch on TV is miserable.
Oh yeah.
Like we have reality TV, and the more raunchy it is, the more fights there are, the more people cheating on their husbands it is.
The more it gets watched.
The more it gets watched, the more episodes it gets. But the wholesome things, like Friends was had a little sexual content, but Friends, Living Single, The Cosby Show, the cartoons we used to watch back in the day. But now it's reality TV shows. Now we're doing murder mysteries, and we're all doing it together. Like we're all like fixated on like destroying ourselves. Then we're fighting on social media. Because now we don't really have connections to each other. I think that's the worst thing we're doing. Like, we already had that issue where we were losing connection, and then the pandemic hit, and now we really don't know how to connect with people.
Yep.
And it's just like, so, even triggers, even though it sounds simple, you really do need to halt, take a time, think about if you're hungry, think about if you're angry, think about if you're lonely, and think about if you're tired, and fix those things.
Yep.
And when you're planning your holiday, think about the people you want around you, the places you want to go, and the things you're going to do when you're there. What do you think, Josh?
I agree 100%. People, places, and things is one of the first things you learn in the rooms. So, like you said, it's very hard, especially if you're coming off, let's say, you're coming off of years being out there on the streets. You come into these rooms and, somebody you barely know is saying, hey, dude, people, places, and things. You're going to look at them and say, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going to go where I want to go. I'm going to see who I want to see. If I want to stop, I'm going to stop. And then you're going to relapse. And then you're going to realize why they say these things and why they've been around for so long and helped so many of us obtain long-term sobriety. Because triggers are going to be everywhere you once stood. For me personally, I was my biggest trigger. And I can't leave me in the living room or in the closet. I can't walk away from me. I took me everywhere I went, and I was my biggest trigger due to the fact that I never wanted to listen. I never wanted to take advice. I always had it figured out. Early on in my steps of my recovery, I got 2-3 months if I was lucky to do so. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm not worried about triggers anymore. And then the very first time I put myself at the sports bar on, Penn Street, just one Jack and Coke won't hurt nobody will know. And then before you know it, that's when I'm back to, back to exactly what I used to do, which is a lot harder than Mr. Jack. But I agree 100%. Like, it's just, we have to be more mindful of what we do with ourselves, where we place ourselves. And, our mental, like, taking care of our mental is everything. Like, not going through day to day, oh, I got this. No, I'm now okay to where, Lee will tell you, because he's not only, a mentor, he's a friend. He'll ask me, hey, Josh, are you okay? I'd be like, fuck, no. Excuse my language, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'd be like, no, I'm not. And being that will save your life some days. Like, it really will. Being able to look at somebody and say, hey, no, I'm not okay. Because we, especially as men, we're not going to do that, but especially as men, we're so used to yeah, I'm good. I got it. Yeah, absolutely, I'm good. And it's just not true. And then before you know it, that lingers. You can plant positive seeds, but sometimes you can also plant those negative ones. And being, false aware and saying, yeah, I'm fine. No, then that slowly starts to hinder in you. And then before you know it, that's what we call reservations. And then before you know it, boom, it's all out the window.
Thanks, Josh and Dr. Cyntrell. For me, I totally agree on the people, places, and things. In my early recovery, I stopped talking to everybody. I left my job. I was the foreman, third shift supervisor at a foundry, and I made very good money. But everybody that worked in there used to get their substances from me. So everybody that I worked with, I was on third shift. I needed them awake. I used to supply them. When I came into recovery, it was through church. It was faith-based, and I gave my life over to God. And I asked my pastor, I said, how am I going to get through this? Like, he said, don't worry about it. a year from now, you won't even remember these days. And he said, in 5 years, people will look at you and won't even see the person you've become. And I didn't believe that. But I did everything he suggested. I was open to suggestions. I was open to advice. I was willing. And I just didn't want to be that same person anymore. I was tired of hurting everybody. I was tired of losing everything. I was homeless. I made my family go into homelessness. So it was real tough. But over time, it got easier going into the rooms. I had a little push to get me into my sobriety. I got stopped for my third DUI. And I was like, man, I gotta stop this. I was celebrating St. Patrick's Day like I was Irish.
Right.
I'm Puerto Rican, right? And here I am out in Hamburg trying to race a Corvette of 61, and I don't even remember what it was. It was an SUV, but it wasn't the best. And of course I lost, but I thought I won. And here he slowed down, and the cop pulled me over, and I had an open can. So the triggers in early recovery for me there wasn't none for that first year, because I made sure I isolated myself from everywhere person, like wherever I didn't go, people, places, or things, I just excluded them all, and I just stayed with the church. So I remember when I first went to my first establishment that sold alcohol, I was 3 years sober. I think I shared the story with you. 3 years sober, and I'm sitting there we were in training all day, and then we went to eat at this Mexican restaurant, and all of a sudden I see a bartender walking by with drinks, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a place that sells alcohol. And I told the person sitting next to me, and they were like, it's okay, you gotta learn to live in this world. So today, none of that bothers me. It's not even a thought, but it took a lot of work. So yeah, I could keep rambling.
And no, but with the triggers too, also like with alcohol, my opinion is I feel strongly that you guys have to be a little bit stronger than me, right? Only to the defense of when my drug of choice growing up was heroin. So I don't walk into Redner's and there's a guy sitting there holding a bag of heroin. So I don't have, but now with alcohol, it's so easily available and it's so readily advertised everywhere we go. Like if you go and you're going to get your bread and your eggs for breakfast, now boom, there's this whole section you have to walk past. And it's funny that they put it right by the dairy, like just in case, like here's your cheese and then here's your 6-pack. Like, but it's harder for you, for individuals who alcohol is their main drug or of choice, because it's right there in your face. And like you said, you have to be able to live in this world if you want to go out to eat, or if you want to walk down the street, you want to go to the grocery store, so yeah.
And I actually think this is going to be, I think you're right, it's all over the place. I think this is going to be the issue with marijuana. Because when people think marijuana is so benign, and then they're using it like, oh, I have anxiety, I have this, I have that. And I'm not saying it's not helpful for those things. I'm not saying it's not helpful for pain. But if you're smoking 8 blunts a day and think you're a functional human being,
right,
then you really need to get a reality check. And now it's becoming more available. I was eating ramen at I guess it's a Japanese, or I don't know.
I thought you were talking about the ramen noodles.
No, like the good ones, the one with the
pho
restaurants, the pho and the eggs in it, the pork, the good one,
the hot stuff.
The hot stuff, And I was eating it, and then I was looked up, and across the hall was like, get Delta 9, get CBD. It was just right there. It was like, okay, I didn't expect that.
Right.
So now, the more we're legalizing this substance, and I'm only speaking of it because I do have worries about people who are thinking that, and I'm not saying there's no medicinal properties. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you need to be careful.
Right.
As much as you think it's helping one thing, it may be triggering something else.
That's right.
I agree 100%.
And you're right, And another thing, you know, your drug of choice was heroin, but I had this guy recently, and I was going through his medication review list. Just because your doctor prescribes it doesn't mean you need to take it 4 times a day for the rest of your life.
Right.
Because at some stage that turns from treating an ailment to dependency and tolerance.
Yeah.
So then you need more and more.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? You may not be in pain anymore. You may just be used to the pill. And you know, I get told no all the time by my patients. But I've never gotten told no if it was a benzo, if it was an opiate. I've never had a patient turn that down. So there is a difference.
Yes.
I've never had a patient come to me and say, I lost my hypertension prescription. Never. But like I do medication assisted treatment, you know, for opioids. I've had people say I've lost my prescription for Suboxone. I have people say I've lost my opiates. I have people say I've lost my Xanax. And I'm not trying to trigger you guys, I'm trying to let you know.
Right.
No one's ever said,
Right.
I lost my amlodipine. I lost my Prozac. I don't get those calls. So just be aware, just because it's available to you doesn't mean it's going to help you or you actually need it. And you have a right to say no to everything, rather it's the alcohol in the store, rather it's the prescription your doctor gave you. You know, so that's all.
I'm glad you touched on that because it takes me back in early recovery as well. I remember there was a few times that to buy time with my ex-wife, you know, so she don't kick me out again, I would say, oh, I want to kill myself. So I ended up on depression pills, you know, on medication for mental health. And I was on it for a while, which I did get my mood stabilized. And they said I was going to be on this forever. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be on medication forever. So over time with therapy and treatment, today I'm not on mental health medication. So you go through the process, but you don't have to remain on it for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I try to encourage people, you know, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, as long as you do it as the doctor prescribes it and they encourage you to do it the proper way. You don't overdo it. But, you know, we're people in recovery, so pills can be our next fix and make us feel so good that we want to keep using it or overuse it. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good one.
That's something people don't really think about, you know, and when I say, you know, you don't have to take this.
Right.
And I'm not saying just stop taking it. I think there has to be a discussion with you and your doctor. But, and I'm not even really talking about Prozac or things like that. I'm talking about the good stuff.
Right.
And you know what the good stuff is, quote unquote, the good stuff.
Right.
You know, you don't have to take that forever because I'm sure your doctor will tell you it's not good forever.
There's so many ways to that you being a doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys help with the weaning process.
Yeah.
So where like, yeah, initially your injury could have sustained you with a, you know, broken back and arms, and then the dosage was higher to help with pain. But then you guys, if asked for, like, and that's the thing that we as the patient have to be responsible enough to do, right? Is come to you and be like, okay, listen,
Right.
you know, I've been taking this amount for a real long time, but now I'm trying to come down. And that's where the addict comes in, because that's what we won't do. So now as an opiate addict myself, so the heroin was super pure back in the day, and that's where I went. But then the pill epidemic hit all of us that were into opiates, you know, and that's one thing, like you said, I related so much to. I've never called my doctor and said, hey, I need help with sleeping, you know, but let my doctor not answer the phone when my, you know, when my oxys were supposed to be at that pharmacy, and I'm calling, I want to talk to your supervisor. You know what I mean? I want to
I'm
talk
calling
to
the board.
Yeah, I want to talk to the pharmacy. Who runs this pharmacy? Because this is bull, you know. But it's just that's who we are as people. But we don't ask certain questions. Like when I was out there, I never once thought about, hey, how can I ask the doctor to help me get off of these? It was, how can I ask my doctor to make it higher? I need it to be higher. This 10s aren't it no more. Like this ain't working. So yes, absolutely.
But that's true because the tolerance again.
Yes.
It makes you want more. So if you're on 10s for 6 months, it's not going to be doing nothing for you. So you need something to fix that. And that's why the treatment, outpatient treatment, intensive outpatient treatment comes in hand, because it's supposed to work hand in hand with the medication, which you shouldn't be on any longer. They should start weaning you off.
But let me say this: you have to understand that you have to be honest with yourself and know that you need to have these conversations. You can't get comfortable and be okay with sitting there. And some doctors, I'm not speaking about you, of course not, but some doctors will just continuously write these scripts, and you have to want that. You have to want the help. You have to understand that the fact that I have to take 3 or 4 of these a day just to start my day isn't healthy. It has to start within, and you have to know that the help is out there, though.
And I'll be honest, as a doctor, I don't want to have to deal with the conversation of you arguing with me about this script.
Right.
There's some personal responsibility. Also, I do care about my license, so I'm always having an argument. I'm not saying I don't, but in reality, I prepare for it. I know who it's going to be.
Right.
Because they've already done it. So I'm already ready for oh my God, JoJo is scheduled. Jesus. And then, it's a whole thing. I got to think about how am I going to make sure JoJo don't jump over the thing and attack me? How do I make sure I don't offend JoJo or make him feel as if I'm judging him? But actually try to get him to come to a place where I'm trying to do what's best for you. And I actually just had this issue with a patient of mine, and those conversations are not ever pleasant, and it's never, you're trying to help me. It's always, you don't understand my plight. You don't understand you're not in pain. Right. This is not pain. You weren't in pain. Like, you had, the injury is over.
It's withdrawal.
And that's the funny part, because the person went to the ER, and I read the ER note, and the doctor said, patient thinks this is pain, but it's actually narcotic withdrawal, but he does not want to hear it. Right. So. And
automatically manipulation kicks in. That's the biggest part.
It's just, there's some personal responsibility, but you really do have to realize that some things are not good for you long term. And everyone's not out to get you. That's another thing with people with mental illness and who suffer from addiction. They kind of have that guardedness where they feel people are out to get them and they don't understand them because they've never been listened to. But actually, some people do care enough to try not to give you the poison that will lead you down a dirty path.
I really appreciate that. So for the third topic, how do you face cravings wherever you go visit for the holidays?
My simple thing about that is, if you don't make a plan, you plan to fail. So again, like when we talked about triggers, I talked about HALT, hunger, anger, loneliness, tired, right? You have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Also, people, places, things. You have to plan what you're going to do. So what do I mean by that? Okay. So I know that if I go to my mama's house, that there's going to be alcohol. Someone's going to offer me a shot. Then I'm like, oh, it's just one drink. It's never one drink.
Right.
It's what is that?
The first and the last.
What is that saying? The man takes the drink. Wait, first the man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. Wow. Right? That's what's that? I think it's an Indian proverb or something. And that's just true. And that's with everything, So what you have to do. So plan, then plan again. And also we're going to talk about the plan first. We're going to talk about the plan, but also you have to prepare yourself if the plan is going left and you're in danger, you need to exit quickly
Mm-hmm.
and go back to your support system. Rather it's calling your sponsor, going to a meeting, because there's always meetings, especially during holidays. I think there's more meetings on the holidays.
They
You
have
know,
the marathon.
it's a
meetings.
marathon meeting.
Yeah.
You know, if what is it in the rooms?
In the
It's
room.
like has those 24-hour marathon. I think it's in the holidays.
Here in Berks County, we're lucky when it comes to meetings. I know that they have marathon meetings on Thanksgiving Day at Common Grounds in West Reading, where they just have continuous meetings all day long, which is pretty cool, and then they even provide food. So there's always help out there for people that are struggling. So what would you say to the viewers that are on here today, if they need help? What's the best way to reach out, and if they feel like it's enough, but they don't find the strength within themselves to say, hey, I need help, and they're out there listening, what could you tell them, what to encourage them to call for help?
You know, one, there's always someone in your life that has wanted to help you, and I'm sure everyone knows who that person is. That would be the first person I call. And if that person doesn't work, you can always go to an ER, or you can go to any 12-step program, because they run them all day, right? But is there a specific help that or you can call this guy at Transformation. What's that number?
It's
Transformation.
484-772-7079, or you can email me at transformationslc14@gmail.com.
Or you can call me, or go to my website, optionspa.com.
And here in Berks County, we have TASK, we have the Reading Hospital. You can just walk in, ask for help. Anybody out of state that may be chiming in, you could always call my number and I can help assist you in that way as well. I could just do some research and find out how to get you help anywhere you're at. You could always call Josh.
Yes, my number is 484-926-8358. I also work in the field, so I've been meeting some amazing people, such as the good guy Lee, my mentor, so I can always direct you where you need to go. And if you just need somebody to talk to, especially for the audience that I'm trying to attack is the inner city of Reading, where I grew up, you know, that urban setting. Just know that I lived there, I lived in the trenches, and I made a difference because I made a difference within myself, and you can do the same thing. And if I can help you in any way, just use these numbers, call me, and we will figure it out.
And before we close out, I want to thank our man Joel that's here with
Big
us,
lunks.
taking care of our camera and sound and everything. Thank you, Joel, for being here today and supporting us. But you know, this has been a great conversation this morning, and I pray that we were able to be of assistance to someone out there struggling today. And if you know anyone struggling with this deadly disease, continue to love, encourage, suggest, and assist them with finding the help they may need. Again, if you are from the Berks County area in Pennsylvania and need help, you can call me for assistance to begin the process in finding you the help you may need at 484-772-7079, or email me at transformationslc14@gmail.com. May God bless you all. Happy Thanksgiving again, and remember to love and cherish all the people who are around you. They are all you have until you arrive to your next place. Stay tuned. Our next podcast will be next week. I will post it all over Facebook, and thank you once again. Please, if you want to keep supporting Transformations, Recovery Speaks, hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your page. God bless you all. Have a good day.
God bless. Thank you. Love y'all.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Man, I was shivering.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, it's cool.
I was